Hi, y'all. This is Kristen Chenoweth.
Hi, I'm Gloria Stefan.
This is Sarah Bareilles.
Hi, I'm Patty Lapone.
This is Lin-Manuel Miranda. You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Hey, I'm Chad Beguelin, and you're listening to the Theater Podcast with Alan Seals. Hello, podcast friends. Welcome to an all-new episode of the Theater Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Seals, and Chad Beguelin is our guest, a man who has come from humble beginnings after being that kid that wouldn't leave the theater after seeing a production of Oliver just because he wanted to stay and watch it again. He got heavily involved into theater himself, and as a teenager, just declared to the cast he was with at the time, he said, "One day, I will write musicals on Broadway." And now 6 Tony Award nominations later, we find him here doing exactly that. Something I find fascinating about Chad, though, is that, believe it or not, he said he was terrible at reading and writing music. Someone known for writing hit musicals is not good at writing music. I think this just goes to show that people who lean into their strengths but can surround themselves with friends and colleagues who complement them with their own separate strengths can truly all come together and produce something marvelous. But Chad is here on the podcast now after writing his first non-theatrical work, a novel called Showmance, which has some fun parallels to a couple of things in his real life. But now let's shift into the interview and he can tell you the story himself. Make sure to find me online on all the socials. And everyone, I hope you now enjoy this episode with Chad Beguelin.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Our guest today is a 6-time Tony Award nominee who may be best known as book writer and lyricist for some of the most incredible works that we've seen in the past many, many years, including The Prom, both the movie and the Broadway production, Disney's Aladdin, The Wedding Singer, and Elf the Musical, which, by the way, is coming back for a little bit of fun time this December, I think. We'll get into that. And he's also a screenwriter and now the author of a new fiction novel called Showmance, which is a witty and heartfelt story that revolves around a struggling Broadway writer. And I think there's probably a little parallel to his real life that I hope we can get into. Beguelin, welcome to the Theater Podcast. Thank you for having me. So, Showmance, I mean, that's a great place to start because Showmance is your first full fiction novel, right? Like that's not made for stage?
Yeah, it's my first time, sort of trying this. And I wrote it and I stopped because I was like, this is a marathon. This is like climbing a hill all by yourself. And then I suddenly, got another jolt of creativity and just, wrote it in almost like possessed state. Like I was almost around the clock for 6 months, just going crazy, and then I sent it to my theatrical agent who sent it to a literary agent and they sent it out and it got sold. And so here we are. It was really a dream come true. And I didn't know, I kept worrying, am I going to be wasting all this time and nothing's going to come from it? So it's really surreal to be able to hold it in my hand in book form.
When did you start writing it and then put it down and pick it up again?
It's hard to say. I want to say a couple of years ago, I wrote a few chapters and I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. And then I suddenly, about a year and a half ago, sort of had this vision of the rest of the story and how it could unfold. And so that's when I was like, all right, I'm going to do it and we'll see what happens. And I kept telling myself, if nothing happens, at least it's a good brain exercise or, it's better than spending my time binging Netflix, which is my other job.
Well,
very seriously,
if you can get paid to binge Netflix, then I don't know where I need to sign up, but I want to sign up.
It's more volunteer work, but it's just seriously.
Very fair. Well, then yes, I'm volunteering for Netflix quite a bit, but I've always been curious because people are like, you should write a book because I don't know, an instructional book or podcasting for dummies or Broadway networking for dummies. I don't know, something. And I feel like before I ever start, I'm always shooting myself in the foot, meaning I don't know how it's going to end, so I don't even want to start. But you said something just now that was really interesting because you started it, then put it down, then when you picked it up again, that's when you decided how it was kind of going to end. Did you have a full arc outline before you even started?
No, not at all. And I'm learning all of these new terms in the literary world, and I'm what's known as a pantser.
Pantser, like.
Sir, which means you're writing by the seat of your pants.
Aha.
an outline. You're not, and it's the exact opposite of writing a musical, because a musical, you start with an outline, you song spot, here the character does this and the arc and the intermission, and it's all thought out. And with this, it was completely different. It was just like, I don't know what's going to happen. I have a general idea. And then, I would write something down and something would occur to me and I would be like, oh, that's even better. So it was totally sort of willy-nilly as compared to the very structured world of writing a musical.
So the main character in Showmance is Noah Adams, and is that some sort of anagram for Chad Beguelin? Like how close how close is that struggling writer to your real life?
Oh, very, 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 very close. Yeah, I mean, I think it was, they say write what you know, and so I was like, well, I was from a small town. I grew up in a wonderful community theater there. So it definitely, a lot of it was based on, my experiences.
That's really interesting. And I guess, yeah, write what you know. So I would write a book about someone who doesn't know how to write a book, I guess.
Very helpful.
It's not a very exciting book, and it's a lot of just sitting around and volunteering to watch Netflix, I think.
Yes.
And podcasting. But so where did you grow up, though?
I grew up in a little town called Centralia, Illinois, which is about 60 miles from St. Louis. And it's actually southern Illinois, because everybody thinks Illinois is like Chicago, but it's a very long state, and it's a very tiny town. And it was when I was in high school, our high school got in the Guinness Book of World Records for winningest basketball team. So it was sports crazy. It was just completely, everything was sports all the time. And I had no interest whatsoever. And much like Noah Adams in the book, one day my parents took me to the community theater to see Oliver. And it was my first time, and I was blown away. And I refused to leave when it was over, because I just wanted more. And
you were sitting in the house. You were that kid that was like, it's time to go now.
Yeah, no, I was. My parents were like, no, that's it. And I was like, can they do it again? And I think, no, they can't do it again. But they said, if you want to be involved in this, they're doing shows all the time. They're doing kid shows. And so it became my second home. And I was so obsessed with the place that I would volunteer to, alphabetize their, filing cabinets, or organize the prop room, and they, finally, when I was 15, I was so obsessed, they just gave me a key to the building. And I'm like, here, just whenever you want, you can come in and you can sweep and you can, iron the costumes and do whatever you want, organize the gels. I was just obsessed with the place. And then at 15, they started letting me write and direct my own shows there, which was just amazing. They were so supportive, and I did it. And it was the one place I remember one time when the first show I did with them was Fiddler on the Roof. And I think it was like in 6th grade. And after rehearsal one night, I said, I'm going to write Broadway shows someday. And everybody laughed. And this woman that played my mother in the show, we were just in the chorus, but we had our backstory. Marilyn Gluck said, stop laughing. I believe him. He's going to do it. And
laughing. I know what this woman. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what she's like.
But it was great. And I was like, wow, somebody believes I could actually do it. And then it sort of changed everything. And everybody was like, okay, sure. If you want to do it, great. Like, let's go. So it was so important to me growing up. So that's why I think I had another sort of reason for writing this book, was to sort of, pay homage to that place and those people.
So then when you were that young, like you at that point knew, though, that you didn't want to perform, you wanted to write, right?
Yeah, I mean, I tried performing. I was terrible, but I liked making up stories, and I liked, ordering people around while they said words.
Well, so then what was your first thing that you really got known for? Because like with timing wise was you came on my radar big time with Prom, because it was just a story that through humor tells such an incredibly serious and well needed story. Right.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I didn't realize your involvement with Aladdin until I helped, co-produce this, the Making of Aladdin podcast that we did on BPN a few months ago.
Really?
And just learning the process of, you know, your situation coming in to work with Alan Menken after, you know, sort of picking up after Howard Ashman had passed away, and like this whole timeline for me is, it just seems it's just like all of a sudden the gate just opened and you just had everything going on at once. But obviously, I mean, maybe not obviously, but is that how it happened? How did all of this get going?
The first professional show that my collaborator Matthew Sklar and I wrote this show called The Rhythm Club, and it went up at the Signature Theater. It was directed by Eric Schaefer, and it was coming to Broadway. We had what was then called the Virginia Theater. Our poster was up in Schubert Alley, and the Washington reviews killed the show, just killed it. And so that's why I use a lot of that in Showmance, a lot of that, you know.
I was going to say, that's a plot point, is the criticality of reviews.
And it's so, you just feel so publicly shamed. It's awful. It's terrible. And so Matt and I were just like, Matt couldn't even walk through Times Square for a while. It was just so heartbreaking. Wow. And then at one point, he was conducting, and I called him up and I said, look, we have to decide, like, I can go get my doctorate and I can become a professor. You can keep conducting, or we can just make the decision that we're going to double down here. And if I have to, you know, bartend and answer phones the rest of my life, that's the deal. And we were like, okay, screw it. We're just going to keep going. And I was, at that point, a few years later, I was pitching a movie called Frankenteacher, which was a kid's movie, which I sold but never got made. I went into New Line to pitch that movie, and I was pitching to this guy, Mark Hoffman, and I could tell he was like not interested at all. And I was like, this is going awful, terribly, horribly wrong. And then he said, you know, like, your name seems familiar. And I said, well, I also write musicals. And he was like, wait a second. He opened his desk and he had the demo for Rhythm Club. And he was like, we just did Hairspray. Do you want to write musicals for us? And I was like, yes, please. And so that's how I got hired for my first Broadway show. So it was kind of one of those things where I look back and I'm like, oh, that crushing, horrible thing had to happen just so Mark Kaufman could have a CG of our demo, so that all of a sudden we were hired for Wedding Singer, and very quickly after that for Elf. So it's one of those, I always, whenever things go wrong, I'm like, what, there was supposed to go wrong. There has to be a reason. I'm one of those people that just can't, you know, it's the way I deal with disappointment. I'm like, it would have been terrible if Rhythm Club would have come to Broadway, it probably would have gotten killed and we would have never tried again. So that's my philosophy.
Oh, wow. So you had the poster up, everything. So the review was off Broadway, and then the review killed it, or the preview for Broadway?
No, we were at the Signature Theater in Arlington, Virginia, which was Eric Schaefer's theater. And it was cast, you know, the Broadway cast was doing it. We were on a smaller stage, but they had already had the designs and were starting to build the Broadway set. And everybody, you know, investors pulled their money, and it was just like, it's dead.
Huh. Wow. Well, that's kind of what happened with Aladdin too. But then you got that Disney money that kept it going.
Yes. Thank God. Thank God for that.
I mean, because the Broadway production of Aladdin, I want to know what's going on in your mind at this point, because the story as it's told, right, is that it was originally staged and written as a stage production to fill a need and a constant ask for a full-length version to replace or subsequent, or subsidize. What's the word I'm looking for? Augment Aladdin Jr. That's what I need.
Yeah.
You know, to do something full length instead of Aladdin Jr. And then it went to Seattle, knowing it was super low budget. It was okay. But then someone said, let's bring this to Broadway. Why isn't this Broadway? And then it was, all the bells and whistles were put back in. All the cut songs from the movie were put back in. And as the story of The Magical Making of Aladdin, the podcast, shameless plug, as that tells, it was terrible in Toronto, but it still came to Broadway, and changes were being made literally in, you know, up until opening night. So from your perspective, it's interesting that your show in Virginia, you know, basically underwent the same thing as Aladdin did, but Aladdin kept going because it's all about the finances, and this is a business after all. But like, having gone through that same scenario more than once, obviously you didn't create Aladdin from scratch, but going through that scenario more than once, one huge success, one not so much. Like looking back at those two scenarios, would you have done anything differently? Like what was kind of going on, especially in the Aladdin time, knowing that there was still finances behind it?
The Aladdin situation was, the book starts with opening night, which is also, I have a story about why it's so similar to Prom. The book starts with opening night and waiting for the review. And I had that experience with Rhythm Club. We did The Wedding Singer, and most of the papers liked it, but the New York Times, Ben Brantley, hated it. And so you do feel like there's this ticking time bomb, and you're sitting there opening night, waiting and waiting and waiting, and you're filming interviews, and you're talking to people and trying to smile and look normal. But inside, you're, just about to explode. And, with Wedding Singer, came out, it was not good. Ben didn't like it. Everybody got really solemn. It got really quiet. People started leaving, and it was just, are we even going to run? Are they going to just close us? And with Aladdin, we had been through so much, and that happened in Toronto. So I was just like, we've done every single we changed almost every single thing. So I don't know. I can't, we gave it our best. And then we were at the party, and all of a sudden this huge roar comes out of the dance floor. And Alan Menken's manager ran over to me and he's like, it's a rave. It's a rave. And I just couldn't believe it after the nightmare that we had gone through. It was such a relief and a shock. I mean, I was expecting to go like, maybe we'll get mixed and maybe we'll run a couple years, and, just you did your best. And so it was just such a reversal.
Wow. I mean, that has to have been a huge weight, just like immediately shed, knowing that it was something that, I mean, as crappy as it is, when the critics like it, then it's gonna be good. Good as in box office will reflect what the reviews say, because a lot of people take their opinions from others.
Yeah, and it's interesting how it's changed though, because like now a good review is great, but it can't actually give you years on Broadway. Prom had a rave review, critics pick, and we still didn't have a long run. So the sad thing is though, bad review can kill you. So
right.
It's like just the evil, terrible things exist now. So it's kind of a bummer.
That's a really good point, because Prom, everyone I know loves Prom. I don't understand why it didn't do well in New York. I truly don't, because I haven't found a single person that doesn't like it.
Yeah, who knows? But we're like very heartened that it's being done. It's being done all over the place, which is great, and it's being done in places where it's starting conversations and ruffling feathers in a good way, and so it lives on.
It does. It doesn't good. It was the first same-sex kiss on the Macy's Day Parade when that performance happened. And I mean, it's made history.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're part of all of this. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the episode. I guess then going back to your career a little bit, like it started out with The Wedding Singer, and then All About Me, and then Elf again, then Aladdin, then Prom, and now Elf a third time.
Yes.
Are you? Do people come to you for, I guess, adaptations of known works like this, or are you more comfortable doing an adaptation, or are you more comfortable doing something completely original?
Yes, I mean, they both have their pros and cons. I mean, with a movie, especially a known title, you have a brand, so people know what they're going to get. The challenge is to make it not just a rehash of the movie, to take it in surprising new directions, but to also keep all the tentpole moments that people expect from their beloved, title. The great thing about an original piece is that you can go anywhere and you can do anything, but it's also completely, there's no structure. You're completely blue skying it from the start. So it's and it's no brand. So people have no idea what the Prom is. What is this Prom musical? You have to sort of educate people. And that was one of the things that was very sort of hard the marketing department of prom, because it's sort of hard to put in a poster like Broadway people and lesbians in high school. You're like, what? So they both have their pros and cons. For example, with the prom, we did a reading once, and Zaz, which opens Act 2, was halfway through Act 2. And Casey Nicola, who's the smartest person I know, is like, we need to start with Zaz, Act 2. And we're like, that's not even possible. He's like, nothing is happening in the first half of Act 2.
Give it some zazz. There's no contest for a girl who has some razzmatazz.
And we're like, we are treading water there. We are, okay. Let's do that. So, you can't do that with Aladdin. You can't go, let's not do the carpet. They'll have your head on a spike. So it's, there are different challenges.
So there's movie adaptations, there's book adaptations, there's all sorts of different adaptations that are currently on Broadway right now. We have representative of everything. And then so Wedding Singer, Elf, Aladdin. So all of those went movie to stage. Prom went stage to movie because what's the story there? Ryan Murphy came and saw it and was like, I got to do this. And then how does the creative team adapt it for, in the reverse?
Yeah, I mean, it was very, Ryan came and we had no idea he had seen the show. And then all of a sudden these A-list movie stars are showing up. We're like, what is going on? And then we finally found out, he wants to do it. And here's this cast. With Ryan, it was very much, he wanted to get it done as soon as possible to hopefully, affect the way the world was going. And so he would, we wrote the screenplay and he would call Bob and me on a Sunday night and be like, I need a new scene for them when they're on the bus. Give Nicole a couple jokes, and if you could get it to me like late tomorrow, that would be great.
With Bob
so
Martin,
it was
yeah.
Always, Bob Martin, my co-book writer. And so it was very, very fast and furious. And like when he needed something, you just had to we were sitting at the beach and my phone rang. It was Ryan. I was like, I'm going back to the house because no summer for me. Not that I'm complete. It's and the other side of it is that when you sell the rights to your musical, you have no more say. He could have taken what we did and set it on the moon. It's his project now.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize it was over that much in their control.
Oh, absolutely. So they can do whatever they want with it. They've purchased the rights. And so you have to there's a lot of letting go, I would have done it that way, but it's Ryan's project now. So Ryan wants no notes from us. It is his show. So, you go in knowing that.
That's interesting. And that explains a little bit, actually. I know that there's a lot of people that were in the cast that I heard there was a little bit of, and we can cut this if you don't want to talk about it, but there was a lot of people upset from the Broadway show who weren't, because they weren't involved or asked to be part of the movie. And I think there was a lot of anger towards the Broadway creative team when I didn't realize until just now how little say everyone had in all of this.
Oh, absolutely not. We had no say over casting. They buy it. It's theirs. It's completely out of our hands. And I would have loved to have done a movie with the Broadway cast, but unfortunately, if you're going to do a crazy, insane budgeted, the budget was insane, you are not going to make that back unless you have huge star names to get people interested.
Yeah. This is the show business, as we
Exactly.
have mentioned, unfortunately.
Exactly.
Yeah. So then with Elf coming back again, I was just looking at IBDB here. It looks like it's going to start November 17th and currently scheduled to run through Jan 4, 2025. So how does that work, bringing another revival back again of the same production that still is relatively recent? Every time it's revived, do you get the chance to reshape things?
Yeah, I mean, for that, I just did lyrics, but I have revamped some lyrics that, it was a different time. There were certain lyrics that every once in a while regionals would get a complaint about. So I've fixed those. So they're hopefully not offensive to anyone. And Bob's done some revamping of the book. But yeah, it's actually the London production. So the set design and costumes and direction and choreography are all from that production.
Oh, cool.
With Broadway performers.
That's cool. It's cool they celebrate Christmas in London too, right? Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
oh, culture. Okay, so that was a joke, people. By the way, don't come at me. When you were telling your story of your childhood, it was performing, it was being on stage, but like a lot of music. You didn't mention like music. Did you play instruments? Do you have a musical background? Because when you're writing book and lyrics, how much are you thinking about the music, and how much music are you laying on top while you're writing lyrics, or are you literally just writing a bunch of words that are really awesome and handing them to somebody else to put the melody to?
I have no musical capability. I can't read music.
Wow.
So with Matt or with Alan, they will plunk it out for me and send it to me. Or if it's lyrics first, I'll just pick a form that I think fits, and I always have an idea, if it comes from me first, what the feel should be. And we'll always discuss what the feel should be. But it's funny, in interviews about the book, they're like, well, how did the songs go? Like the song at the end, I'm like, oh, I don't know. I mean, I have an idea what it would kind of sound like, but I have no melody in my head. So it's something I tried very hard to learn how to play the piano, and I'm just terrible. And it's, music is a lot of math, and I'm terrible at math. So it just was impossible. So I was like, okay, let's not waste time.
I think that's really cool that you have made such a successful career in musical theater without being really good at music.
Right.
I think that's incredible.
There were things that I had to check in the book, because in the book he writes music too. And so I had to check, like, is that, like, at one point I had somebody says like, the more minor. And I was talking to somebody and they're like, there's no such thing as more minor. It's major or minor. So I did like things like that. Like, hey, dummy.
Let's add a little bit more minor to this chord.
Yeah. Like, hey, dummy. So, I had to keep checking things. Could let's say a baritone sing a soprano, down the, that can work. So it just had to check that things were believable.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, now you've got to send this off to Bob Martin and Alan Menken and you got to send this off to your buddies and be like, listen, can you just like plunk out a melody for me real quick? Because I want to put it on TikTok or something. You can start putting these songs from Showmance out on TikTok and ask people to duet. That's your viral marketing right there.
I'm all for it.
People need to start. People do that. All right. So everybody get the book, write your own melodies, tag me and Chad in your songs.
And when we make the movie.
That's right. Yeah. The first casting, first right of refusal.
Oh, can I tell you why the prom parallel?
Oh, yeah.
So I wrote the first few chapters of the book and I put it away and I was like, that's a lot of work. Because, you write 5 jokes in a musical and you're like almost through the scene. You write 5 jokes in a book, you're not even off the first page. And I was like, oh, this is a lot of work. So then we were, I sort of forgot about it. We were working on Prom and we had a workshop and we had an opening number called I Hate My Life. And it showed all 3 actors doing different terrible shows. It was the curtain call of their horrible, horrible shows that they were in. And it just was confusing and it didn't work. And we were all sitting around after the workshop. And I said, I started this book that I'll never finish. And, his show opens and closes on the same night. Like, oh, that's great. Let's use that. And I'm like, okay, great. And then when I went back and sort of got my groove back and started writing the book again, I was like, do I need to change that? Do I look like a one-trick pony now? And then I was like, it's okay to steal from yourself. But people have brought it up to me that have read advanced copies. They're like, this first scene seems familiar. Hey, shut up. Don't tell anybody.
Hey, shut up, man. No,
you write a book.
Do you write with any particular actors in mind when you're picturing something? Because I mean, for the prom specifically, I remember talking to Casey Nicola about this. Is that when they were casting, they're always just like, we just need like an Angie Schwartz type. We need someone like Angie, just like Angie. And then someone was like, why don't we just freaking get Angie? She can do it. Right?
Exactly.
But so like when you're writing and creating in your head, when you're, before the creative team comes in, before the music comes in, are you writing for a particular style of, or a particular type of actor? Like, there are so many character actors that are so well known in the industry, a Jen Samard or a Chris Sieber, or like literally everyone in Prom, like those roles were made for those people.
Yeah, I mean, with that, and with we're working on a new show with the creative team for Prom. We're definitely like, this is this person and this is that person. But it's funny with a novel, you don't do that. And somebody, or I guess maybe people do, but somebody asked me, I was doing one of these interviews, and they're like, who would be the movie cast? Who would play Luke and who would play Noah? And I was like, I had never even thought about it. I have no idea. Like, and it's funny how with something like The Prom, where it becomes Beth Level's character, and they become sort of symbiotic. Whereas with the novel, I was sort of surprised, and I don't know if because somebody doesn't like take over ownership of the character. I was sort of surprised how real they became to me in my head. And I remember at one point when I was writing it, I was out to dinner with my husband, Tom, and I burst into tears. And there were some cocktails involved. But he was like, what's wrong? And I was like, I'm going to have to break his heart. And he's like, whose heart? And I was like, Noah's. And he's like, you mean the made-up person that lives in your brain? Like, yeah, that guy. But I think what it was is that I realized, I'm going to have to go back and relive all those things that you feel when you're dumped, when you're, and like go through it.
Man.
Bring back the sense memory of what it felt like and how desperate and cast aside you feel and how you have no say in it. And it was just like, and so writing those scenes, no spoiler alert, but, writing those scenes was really hard because I was pulling on my own experiences, and it's weird. And I think if it does, please God, someday get made into a musical or a movie, then it will be different, because then it'll be, that's that person's character now.
Right.
But just sort of, and that's the exciting thing that I felt about writing the book, was that you get inside of the audience's head. And you get to get them inside of Noah's head while he's falling in love and getting his heart broken and putting his foot in his mouth and being proven wrong about everything, learning he's sometimes a dick, trying to work on that. And the other thing that is, you don't have anybody's interpretation of it. There's no director putting their spin on it. There's no actor putting their take on it. So it really is, there's no middleman. You're talking right to the audience. And it also means that whatever their idea of, hot farmhand is, that's their idea of it. And the process is so different. It's just, it's really strange. And I got Andrew Sean Greer, Pulitzer Prize winner, for less, to read my book and give me a blurb, which I didn't know him at all.
Wow.
I out of the blue. And I sent him a message. I said, is this tacky? But I need would you read my book and give me a blurb? And he's like, it is tacky, but we all have to do it. Send me your manuscript. And he gave me this wonderful quote. But he said to me in the email, he's like, this is going to be different for you because people are going to be laughing and reacting, but you're not going to hear them. You're not going to have, it's not like the theater where you go in and you're like, that joke worked and that joke didn't. You're just going to be in this bubble, and they're going to just be, people will experience it very privately as opposed to very vocally in a room and a crowd. So it's been a learning experience.
Has that been hard? Like there's no out of town tryout for a book.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's just weird because it's like, there's never going to be, I'm doing a book event at the Drama Bookshop on October 3rd. So that'll be a chance to talk to, actual readers about it. And I'm doing a few more sort of in the Midwest. But yeah, it's sort of like the public I'm supposed to say pub date. I'm learning all these terms. The pub date, the publication date is October 1st. And I was like, oh, I can't wait until October 1st. And I was like, nothing's going to happen. Like you're not going to get any sort of response. Like there's not going to be like opening night. Yay. It's just sort of like, oh, yeah, okay, it's out there.
Launch
Right?
party. We'll throw you a party. Let's throw a party. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the episode. So I did a little dream casting, speaking of casting. When I was reading it, here's the people that I pictured in the roles. I think, so Noah Adams should be played by Andrew Garfield.
Okay.
Because, Chase, who is Noah's boyfriend, Henry Cavill.
Oh, very nice.
Kiara, is it Kiara or Kiara, Noah's best friend?
Kiara, yeah.
Kiara should be Tessa Thompson.
Nice.
Luke Carter, Noah's high school nemesis turned family farm worker, is Chris Hemsworth.
Yes.
Carrie Payne, the ruthless theater critic, is Meryl Streep.
Of course.
Yes, that is easy for her. So Danielle Vincent, let's see, the director, Larger Than Life, played by Cate Blanchett. She'd be great.
Nice.
Noah's mom and dad are Sally Field and Jeff Bridges.
Love it.
There you go. Make that happen.
I'm on it. You know how much control we have.
I wonder, you know what? I should have done that. Now I regret not doing that with Broadway people. I should have done it with people that are not TV and film celebrities. I should have done Broadway celebrities.
But the Jeff Bridges is pretty good.
So real quick, I'm not going to spend as much time on this. So if we are going to do this Broadway style, Noah should be Ben Platt. Chase could be Ramin Karimloo. Maybe.
Nice.
Yeah. Kiara is Cynthia Erivo. Luke is Derek Klena. Carrie Payne is Patti LuPone.
I almost said Patti LuPone.
Yeah. Danielle is Audra McDonald, and Noah's mom and dad are Beth Level and Brian Stokes Mitchell.
I love it.
All right, there we go. So let's start our wrap up with a little trivia game. Not trivia. We're gonna play a game called Plot in 60 Seconds. And so what you do is you give me a number 1 through 16, and I have 16 shows written down here. And so the number you give me is the show that you will have to give me the real plot to in 60 seconds or less.
Oh, let's go with 15.
Okay. So we're going to put 60 seconds up. 15 is Avenue Q. Go.
60 seconds remaining.
So it's Sesame Street with a guy who wants to find his purpose and ends up, with the help of his friends, opening a school for the other puppets and monsters in
45 seconds remaining.
That's a 15-second plot. Okay. All right. Not sure if I'd invest in that.
Hey, it's not my show. It's fine.
All right. So now this is 3 standard questions I ask everyone, wrapping up the episodes. The first one simply is just what motivates you.
I think hopefully that if I write something that can make somebody's day better, even in the smallest way, that I have succeeded.
I like that. Okay. What advice would you give to your younger self and younger people listening now, starting out down a similar path?
It has got to be bad before it can be good. So you've got to write the first draft and don't give up. Don't look at it and say, this is terrible. You got to say, all right, how can I make it better? Because writing is rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. And, take rejection like a champ.
And if your poster's up in Schubert Alley and it never comes to Broadway, don't go get your doctorate.
Exactly. Yeah. Just man up and keep going.
Okay. Final question. Hardest one. If you could only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want, what would you see?
Oh, probably, Evita.
Ooh, which production?
The original Halprin staging.
Nice. Good choice. Where can we find you online on social media?
On Instagram, I'm at Chad Beg, and or you can check out my website, which is creatively called chadbeglin.com.
Chad Beg. That's easier to spell than Beguelin. What kind of heritage is that? Where does that come from, by the way?
My father is French Swiss and my mother is Scots Irish. So, but the name used to be Beguelin. But because we lived in small podunk town in the Midwest, became Beguelin.
Beguelin, Chad.
Yeah.
It was
And my mother's mother just gave up and said Bagland. You can try.
Chad Bagland. All right. Bagland. All right. Well, check the show notes, everyone. I'll have a link to get Showmance. Of course, check it out and imagine your dream cast of choice while you are reading it. Make sure to get tickets for Elf the Musical, which is coming back this holiday season. You can get more of me at theater_podcast on Threads, Instagram, TikTok. I'm on Facebook. Leave a rating and a review wherever you are listening to this episode now. It helps the podcast grow and helps get Showmance out there into the world. Thanks to Jukebox the Ghost for the intro and the outro music. And Chad, thank you so much. I've enjoyed this chat.
This has been great. Thanks for having me.
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.